Hey, what's going on, everybody? Manny here once again. Welcome to DFS Zone, your source for daily fantasy sport lineup advice for the NBA and the NFL. I got a brand new video for you, ladies and gentlemen. Before I get started with today's video, I appreciate you guys drop a like. And if you're new to the channel, first time here, never ever seen any of my NBA lineup advice videos, you want to be able to get this content on a regular basis. The only thing you need to do to be a part of the DFS Zone community here, ladies and gentlemen, is subscribe down below and make sure that bell icon on the right-hand side of the subscribe button, make sure you click on that and turn that on. The reason for that is because that will notify you when I upload a new NBA or an NFL lineup advice video. All right. With that being said, today is Tuesday, December 11, 2018. We have 3 games on tap in the association today. That's basically it. First things first, 3-game slates. Everybody's available. There's not a whole lot of injury news, okay? Also, if you're new to the channel, first time here, when I have a 3 or 4-game slate, I basically have been doing as of late is just giving you my top 5 plays, 1 player per position that I'm really favoring, and then I put those in the Fantasy Crunchers player pool, and then I build more of a player pool with some of the other possible plays that I think will be in play for per position. And then what I do is I spit out the optimizer and spit out about 25-30 lineups, and we get an idea of more or less what kind of percentages we're getting on those particular players. And basically that's it. So if you're interested in seeing that on a regular basis, definitely become a subscriber. And if you haven't done so already, so that when we have these 3 games, these small slates, you'll be able to see how that works on a fantasy cruncher, and you'll be able to get a couple of free lineups. Which if you want to utilize, you can. Now, I stress this highly, I don't use a whole lot of the Fantasy Cruncher or any optimizer. I've used RotoWire, whatever it may be, anything that you use out there. Don't necessarily use all the optimizers because some of them are programmed with algorithms, slightly different than others. So you're going to get different projections and so on and so forth. I like to just see what kind of percentages I get per position and what players are more highly suggested for us. And you can be able to see that just by seeing that the projected points and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, it definitely helps to build some lineups, but I like to just see more or less the percentages, and then I mix match and look for value, and then make my lineups on my own. And if I really love a particular lineup, I'd be totally honest with you, I play it. But other than that, majority of the time I don't play much of the lineups that I get out of the optimizers. Okay, with that being said, let's just get to it. Okay, so as far as injury report, yesterday we had tons of injuries, and I shared with you a lot of possible plays. And yesterday was pretty darn good. Other than my centers, everybody that I pretty much had selected, except for Blake Griffin, that was pulled out for rest at the last moment. About an hour before lock, we found out that Mr. Blake Griffin wasn't going to play. So I basically tweeted out that I was more so on Lyles and Marcus Morris, and more so on Morris. And Morris ended up having a great game. Lyles was a little bit subpar, I think like 21 fantasy points. But Mr. Marcus Morris had a nice game. And then, of course, I told some people you should be on Mr. Harris. And Harris had the best game of the night, Tavares Harris. As far as injuries today, just the only one to really be keeping an eye on is Lou Will, it's a hamstring, and it happened during last night's game. They're on the front end of a back-to-back, the Clippers. So I personally believe, hands down, I would say probably 99%, Mr. Lou Will is not playing today. At least, that's in my opinion. So stay on top of that injury news. If he is out, definitely it's going to be a bump, just like last night for Mr. Beverly, as well as Bradley, and of course Mr. Alexander. So you definitely got to consider those 3 guys are probably going to get the most out of the Lou Will situation of him being out. And that's basically it. That's the only thing of any value as far as injuries today. So let's get right to it. At point guard. Today at point guard, when I'm thinking at point guard here today, man, you got Lillard and Chris Paul and Kyle Lowry up at the top. And to be honest with you, I am not in favor of playing any one of those 3 today. But me telling my viewers out there, if I was going to choose anybody, obviously Chris Paul at home, you might have to have some exposure to him there. It's a competitive game against Portland. He's going up against D. Lil. He's more than likely going to get fired up for the game. The only thing about me as of late with Houston, just like I told some people on Slack and some of the other things, I'm not too fond of how the Houston Rockets have been playing as a team as of late. They have let me down, Paul as well as Harden, a few times already this year. And to be honest with you, me personally, I'm not playing any one of the Houston Rockets today at all. None. That's totally me being totally honest with you. But again, in a DFS, as far as daily fantasy sports, as far as, hey, what I can give my viewers, definitely I do believe that you should have some exposure to Paul. His price is just about right. He has the upside. Same thing with Lillard. I think him there at 10,200, you need 50 pretty much from him. He's capable of getting it done on the Houston Rockets. But me personally, I like some of the major studs. I like kind of Kawhi Leonard a little bit more today, some DeMar DeRozan. I'd rather pay up there than to pay up at the centers today, as well as maybe here at the point guard position, and even in the shooting guard spot. So I'm going to come down, and I'm going to go with DeAnthony Melton. DeAnthony Melton, he's coming in here, 6 points, pretty much 3 rebounds a game, 3 assists a game, 15.6 fantasy points per game. And, I'm basing this all more so on Melton, more on the factors that he's been playing more, and he has been now locked in as pretty much the starting point guard here for this team. And that's what it's coming down to. Now, I know they're playing again on the front end of back-to-back. They played last night against the Clippers, and they got to go out there and play again today. But this guy's a young man. He has no injuries. I don't see him having a problem. Plus, he already played the back-to-back a week ago. As you can see here on the 6th and 7th, he did play 24 and 25 minutes respectively and did fine, put up nearly 1 fantasy point per minute in both of those games. So I don't see it being a factor. But 5,300, you need 26 from him. And on DK, he's 4,300. Love that price on DK. You only need about 21 there. And as you can see, he's only averaging 16. But he's been averaging more than 16 in those 4 games. As you can see, that 21 pretty much fantasy points or better. And he's had 2 30-point games. He's also playing over 23 minutes per game, and in the 3 out of those 4 games, he's been averaging pretty much 1 fantasy point per minute, which I totally love, as you guys know. Again, the front end of it back-to-back, but he did play it a week ago or so, and he put 24 and 25 minutes respectively, and did put 21 and 24 respectively as far as fantasy point totals. So I am not concerned at all with DeAnthony Melton playing any additional minutes or getting any reduced minutes. They're going to need to play. They were competitive last night. Chances are, hopefully, they'll be competitive again today, simply because these two teams already played each other twice, and both games were blowouts, with Phoenix winning one, and of course, San Antonio winning the other. The only thing, the whole beauty of the whole situation for Melton today is that San Antonio has been so bad, giving up tons of points and tons of fantasy point totals to opposing point guards and shooting guards, that you definitely got to love the matchup for Mr. Melton. In those 2 games against San Antonio this year, he shot 31% from the floor, 4 of 13 in those 2 games, and shot 28% of 3 from 2 of 7. Again, let me just share that with you here. As you can see, those games, he only played 10 and 20 minutes. He was not an integral part of the offense back then. That was back on November 14th, which is nearly a month ago, and 5.5 weeks ago, or nearly 6 weeks ago, when he played them on October 31st on Halloween, where he put up 21 fantasy points. He played 20 minutes in that game, had a 30% usage rate, only took 12 shots in that game. But since then, as you can see, that has all changed. As you can see now, Mr. Melton is playing more than 25, 26 minutes per game over the last 4 or 5 games. His usage rate is over 22%. He's been shooting about 10 to 11 shots per game over the course of the last 4 games. He's getting some threes off, about 3 or 4 a game. He does a little bit of everything, this young man. He's getting some rebounds. He's getting some assists. As you can see, he's defending. He's had 4, 5, 6 steals over the course of the last 4 games, and he's been in double-digit scoring from the floor in 3 out of those 4 games. So I like Mr. Melton here. Definitely do. He's going up against San Antonio. 21st in defending against point guards, and in the last 5 games, they have allowed 35.9, pretty much 36 fantasy points per game to opposing point guards. I have here they gave up 32 to Rubio, 35 and 37 to Ball in respective games back-to-back, 59 to Damian Lillard, and 38 to Chris Paul. They have increased their fantasy point totals have increased, giving more, almost close to 7 fantasy points more over this stretch of the last 5 games. So they're definitely struggling there. I love Melton in the matchup here. Definitely think that Mr. DeAnthony Melton should be a nice play here today. Again, like I said, I'm okay with Lillard. I'm okay with Paul. Definitely not too high on Lowry at all, but Melton is definitely in play. So we're going to come here, and because it's a 3-game slate, we'll pencil him in there so you can see it on the screen, and we're going to come over to the cruncher. And at the cruncher, as you can see, for point guard, I have already clicked on Lillard. I definitely punched in Paul. I definitely punched in Melton. I do believe Alexander is someone to consider, especially with the with the injury to Mr. Williams. Then you got to consider Patrick Beverley, and you got to consider here on the lower tier range, you got to consider Eli Okubu, and you got to also consider Patty Mills, simply because he's pretty much almost like 1 fantasy point per minute at 3,700. You can't go wrong. You only need 16, 17 minutes or 16, 17 fantasy points from him, and he's capable of doing that. As you can see, 21, 24, and the minutes are there. He's getting more than enough minutes. So you're paying for minutes, and you're paying for the possibility of him hopefully having a game where he can get 20 or more for you. So you got to throw him in there. You could also even go for Forbes, but I'm not. So the ones with the check marks are the ones that are going to be in a player pool. If anybody thinks that anybody else should be added on here, I could always share later on if those percentages change, but I think these are the guys that we should be going with. All right, we're going to go over the shooting guard. And a shooting guard today, obviously, you got James Harden and DeMar DeRozan at the top. I think that you can go with either one of the guys. This is one thing I want to point out to the viewers, right? I'm not on Houston today at all. But this is what I recommend. You can go two ways about this. Obviously, today you can go with studs and scrubs again today. I think you're capable of doing it. I think you could capable of fading some of the stud guys that might be in tougher matchups, and basically go with some mid-tier players. But when it comes to like Houston and Portland, which could be a competitive game, the one game that could be a complete blowout is the Phoenix-San Antonio game, so you got to be a little careful who you play there. The Toronto Clippers game, to me, in my opinion, should be the best game of the night and the most competitive, even though the Clippers are on the front end of a back-to-back. Portland and Houston should be competitive. Houston and Portland, so you should have some exposure to it. I am not at all opposed to you guys playing Portland Houston as a stack, because it is a 3-game slate. I think the 2 games you could stack could be the Toronto Clippers game as well as the Portland Houston game. But my recommendation is, if you play multiple lineups, folks, make sure that you cover your rear end. It's just to play it and really, not to get too drastic, but definitely cover your ass in this situation where it comes to selecting players. If you decide that you're going to stack up and you're going to use 2 or 3 core players in your lineup to make a lineup through Portland, you make sure that if you make multiple lineups, make sure you cover your other end on the other end of the court with the Houston players. So in other words, if you decide you go with Lillard and CJ McCollum and let's say Nurkic, make sure that your next lineup has the favors of the top 2 or 3 for Houston, either Capella with Harden, Capella with Paul, or having stacked all 3 Houston top dogs together and making sure you fade a little bit of the Portland guys in that particular lineup. Just in case Houston goes off, those players go off, you have them in one of your lineups, and just in case it doesn't pan out that way, it pans out with the Portland guys on your other lineup. If you make a third lineup, make sure you game stack the lineup. So those are the little strategies you can use that I normally use when I make lineups, especially in small slates, and only if you're capable of and you have more than enough funding to be able to do multiple lineups. So that's something to consider there. And again, you can always go and you can actually get 3 or 4 guys from this game and pair up 3 or 4 guys if you can in your lineup through the Toronto Clippers game, because they're the 2 more competitive games that are going to be a little closer as far as implied totals. But that's what I recommend. It's entirely up to you, and that's only if you're going to play multiple lineups. Other than that, if you're planning to get a core, you could go with a core 5 or 6 players here that you really, really love and build around it, and then mix and match and make sure that if you decide that you're going to go more with paying down at guard, then make sure that you got a lot of those all those little lower tier price players. You mix and match them like the Mills and the Forbes. You have one lineup where you have Mills, one with Forbes, and then the next lineup you have maybe Mr. Bradley. Just keep that 3,000 to 500 to 3,900, 400, 4K players somewhere in that format, and utilize those 3 or 4 that more than likely you're going to get exposure to their respective games as far as the amount of minutes that you more than likely think they're going to get. All right, that's just to give you a couple little tips. So, all right, back to shooting guard. So, for me today, I'm not on Harden, but he's definitely someone in play. We know he has the upside. We know he's capable of getting you 60 or better, and he is at home. Just Houston has been playing so bad. I'd rather wait and to see these guys play better. He hasn't hit 55, which what you pretty much need here, in about 3 or 4 games or more. But I'm willing to pay to see if Phoenix could stay close here, and I will probably go with DeMar DeRozan at 9,600. You need about 47 to meet value here. On DK, he is 9,200. You need 45 there. He's averaging 25, 6, and 6, so we're going to give you a balanced stat sheet. 42.8, pretty much 43 fantasy points per game. And again, when you look at him, we'll come over to the cruncher and DeMar DeRozan. He is pretty solid, man. 4 out of his last 5 games, he's pretty much at 48 plus, and he's had at least in that same stretch 36 plus minutes per game in 4 out of those 3 games. His usage rate in that same stretch, 33% pretty much on average. He's been averaging about 22 to 23 shots over the course of the last 3 games, so he's been really putting up the ball quite a bit. He's been aggressive also, getting to the foul line, as you can see, more than about 8 to maybe 9 times per game. So he's really, in this game here, 18 times, 10 and 10 here. So he's been aggressive. He fills up the stat sheet. We all know that you're going to get rebounds. You're going to get assists. He's been really good in the last 2 games. You're going to get the defense. DeMar DeRozan is one of the better defenders in the league. You got 2 and 1 in the last game. He's capable of getting you blocks and steals. So he fills it up for you. He's someone that's pretty solid in those areas. His home and away splits have been pretty darn good as well. 49% field goal percentage, 84% from the free throw line. He's been averaging 26 points per game from the floor at home, and he is averaging 44 fantasy points per game. In 2 games against Phoenix, the numbers have not been spectacular, 34 and 39. But again, let's take a look at this for a minute. You got to look at these games were blowouts, right? 32 and 28 minutes, 30-point win here, and pretty much a 20-point loss over here. All right. And when you look at here, he only took 15, 12 shots in this game. 15 and 12 and 32 and 38 minutes. This was way back on November 14th and December 31st, a month to almost 6 weeks back between the 2 games respectively. And as you can see, that has all changed. In the last 4 out of the last 5 games, he's taking more than 20 shots a game. What this is telling you is that he and the actual coaching staff will realize that he is the main offensive weapon, and the ball should revolve around DeMar DeRozan. It has changed drastically since then. Back then, they were probably still trying to get the ball inside a lot to Mr. Aldridge. They're starting to realize now that this game and this team revolves around DeMar DeRozan. DD needs to touch the ball more than 20 times a game, and they're starting to realize that, and that's the reason why right now at this point in time his numbers look better and he's putting up bigger numbers, and it's just all due to the fact that he is the main guy. And this is one of the reasons why I think we should take him today. If the game happens to be a blowout, even if DeMar DeRozan gives us 40 or 45 fantasy points, I'll be happy with that, even though we want to see him get 55 or better so he could exceed value here. You need, like I said, 46, 47 here to meet value. You want him to get to 56. I always aim for 10 fantasy points more. That's pretty much what you want to really do when it comes to GPPs. So he is definitely a GPP play, and he's definitely good enough for cash as well today with his price tag. Even if he gets you 40 in a 3-game slate like this, I'm okay with it. That number may be better than some of the guys that we're considering at maybe at Harden at 11,000, where you need 55, and let's say he only gets you 40. Then DeRozan ended up being a better deal price per dollar because he was able to get 45 with a less price tag. So, again, these are things you got to look at. DeMar DeRozan, to me, I think is a fine play today. I think Phoenix has been playing a little bit more competitive lately. Even though they're on the front end of a back-to-back, I still think that they'll be able to compete here because San Antonio has been so bad defensively that they cough up quite a bit of points. I think they're giving up about 113 to 114 points per game to the opposition, respectively, on average. So, again, DeMar DeRozan is definitely in play for me. Going up against Phoenix, they're 22nd, pretty much 22nd in defending shooting guards. They have only allowed, in the last 5 games, only 19.3 fantasy points per game, which is pretty darn good. But again, only 2 players have done fairly well against them in that stretch of 5 games, and that was Josh Richardson, who put up 25, and Buddy Hield of the Sacramento Kings put up 29. But that's about it. But those guys, this is a totally different guy here. This is a guy that's taking tons and tons of shots. And he gets tons of usage. Definitely like DD here. So DeMar DeRozan in play. I did put in a player pool. I do think that C.J. McCollum is someone you got to consider. I definitely think Danny Green. I really love Danny Green here, even though the Clippers are 3rd against defenders, defending shooting guards. But he is a good perimeter shooter and 3-point shooter, and he's actually a pretty good defender as well. So you can get a lot of peripherals from him. Then you got Mr. Bradley, obviously, with that $3,900 price tag. You got to consider Troy Daniels here, obviously, at $3,700. And, of course, Jamal Crawford, depending on his injury. If he is out, definitely Daniels gets more of a bump in minutes. So at $3,700, if you're getting 17 minutes or so from Daniels, which as of late you can see he's been playing 22, 21, 32, and 32. So he's getting more than enough minutes, capable of getting you 20 or more fantasy points. So Troy Daniels is someone to consider. So those are the guys I got in the player pool, all right? We're going to get to that in a moment. We're going to go down to small forward. At small forward, I'm loving Kawhi Leonard, plain and simple, hands down. Out of everybody that's here, he's definitely in play. He's in a good competitive game. He's going up against a team that struggles up front against small forwards and power forwards. We got to take advantage of it, even though they have a couple of solid small forwards and power forwards on their ball club as well. Kawhi Leonard is probably the best defender in the league, so you're going to get a lot of additional fantasy points. I love him here, man. 10,700. He's averaging 26 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 46 fantasy points per game. At 10,007, you need 52, 53 to me value. Really a large number, but I think if the game could stay competitive, I definitely like Kawhi Leonard in this matchup. DK, he's 9,400 on DK, so he's $1,300 cheaper there. You only need 47 on DK, and that's pretty much his average. So that is pretty darn good. As you can see, he had 34-plus minutes in 8 straight games. I mean, and I love to see the minutes, of course, when he does play. There's been some breaks in between because he needs that rest. But nonetheless, let's go over to the cruncher. And Kawhi Leonard right here. And Kawhi, as you can see, man, like I said, the minutes are there, 34-plus minutes, especially over the last 8 games. He's been averaging pretty much 44-plus fantasy points per game in 8 out of these last 9 games. And he's had a 64, he's had 3 50-point games, 4 50-point games during that stretch. And if you go even further down, he did have a 62 spot back down here against Boston. So he has been putting up more than enough numbers. He's pretty much, his usage is anywhere between 29 to 30% on average, and he's taking at least 19 to 20 shots per game on the average. And as you can see, he's also taking about 6 or 7 threes per game on the average. And he is so aggressive with attacking to the basket that he gets to the foul line. He's getting to the foul line at least 6 or 7 times, 8 times a game, pretty much over the same stretch. And of course, he balances out the stat sheet better than almost anybody. He gets rebounds, he gets assists, and he's capable of defending, and he is probably, if not the best, if he's not one of the best, he is the best defender in the NBA. Look at this, 11 steals over the course of the last 3 games and 4 blocks. That's what I'm talking about. That's how you get 64s and 53s as far as fantasy point totals and double-digit scoring from the floor. I mean, he's been just lights out. His home and away splits have been great. Last 7 games, though, in those 2, over the course of those games, 47%, 7 games on a row, 47% shooting, 41% from 3. And he's shooting 82% from the free throw line, averaging 25 points from the floor per game and 46.6 fantasy points per game, pretty much 47 fantasy points per game. Love it. He's going up against the Clippers, as you can see, 30th, again, defending small forwards thus far this year. As of late, they've been okay, giving up 25.4 fantasy points per game over the last 5-game stretch. They did give up 31 to Ariza, 28 to Kyle Anderson, 42 to Mr. Harrison Barnes, and 26 to Ariza again. So Ariza 26 and 31 over the course of 2 games over the last 5 during the course of that span. And we're talking about Kawhi Leonard here. I mean, he is definitely one of the top players in this league. So I think it's going to be really a tough matchup for the Clippers. I love Kawhi Leonard there. As you can see, I also penciled in here Rudy Gay. I'm not so high on Gallinari. He hasn't had great success there. His price is a little high for what I believe he's going to be able to get out of Toronto. But again, you guys can't consider him. I'm not putting him in a player pool. I'm not putting Ariza in the player pool just simply because Ariza, remember guys, Ariza has been rumored for days now about being traded to the possibly being traded to the Lakers. So you got to always keep that in mind. Be careful if that you take him in your lineup. I'm not saying don't put him in your lineup. You can, but you got to be aware of the factors that if you put him in your lineup and then make a trade at the last moment, an hour or half hour before game time, you're not close to your computer and not make that change. You're going to lose out with Trevor Ariza. So always keep that in mind. So I'd rather fade him if I were you guys and not play him. TJ Warren definitely in play. He's coming back from injury. They're going to need him a lot tonight. Bridges has been solid at 5,000. You need 25. I think that's not a bad play with him. He's been getting more than enough minutes. He's been getting 39, 35 minutes over the course of the last 2 games. Evan Turner is not a bad play for Portland at 4,700. Then I'm thinking down here, you got to also think of Mo Harkless as well. So I have him in the player pool. We could consider James Ennis, but he's more of a defensive guy. He'll play a lot of minutes, but he's not going to give you a whole lot of fantasy points. So I am not too high on him. But that's pretty much what I have as small forward. So only about 5-6 guys there going into the player pool. All right, let's go over to power forward. And at power forward today, man, you guys know if you've been here long enough, I'm not too high on LaMarcus Aldridge. And he's a tough matchup for Aldridge just simply because, you know for a fact that Kawhi Leonard is going to get, DeMar DeRozan is going to get most of the opportunities here. But Aldridge, for me, I just at 8,400, you need 41, 42 to me value, and I just don't think in this matchup he's going to get 41 or 42. Now, he'll probably get close, 30 to 35, but I'm going to fade him. Tobias Harris is a fine play, but he was the better play last night. Tonight, I think it's more Montrezl Harrell in the matchup against Toronto, just due to the matchup. You got to deal with Siakam, possibly some Ibaka. You're gonna have to battle under the boards with some Valanciunas. So I could see them getting the bigger guys up there. So Harrell will probably get a little bit more minutes today. Plus, he only played 25, 26 minutes last night. So he's well rested. Yeah, he only played 23 minutes last night. So Montrezl is definitely more appealing to me than Harris. Harris played more minutes last night. He played 41 minutes. Really, really nice game from him. So you may want to see him get a little bit more rest today. So play maybe a little bit less minutes, under maybe 30 to 35 for him as opposed to 40. So I favor Harrell here if you're going to go with any of the Clipper guys. I'm going to have some exposure to both, but I think I'm going to be more exposed to Harrell. We'll see what the optimizer says. I definitely like Pascal Siakam here the best at 6,800. I think Toronto really needs him to play very well today. So he is the one one power forward that I really like the most. So Siakam coming in here pretty much close to 14.5, 15 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 3 assists, 30 fantasy points per game. He's 6,800 on Fanduel, so you need about 34 fantasy points to meet value. On DK, he's 6,300. You need about 32, 33. Very much capable for him. As you can see in the 3 out of the last 4 games, he's pretty much hit that price point, his crush value. Let's go over to him over here on the cruncher. And as you can see, yes, pretty much 3 out of his last 4 games, he's hit 34 plus fantasy points. So he's above that value. Also in that same stretch, his usage rate has been okay, 24 and 22 here. 19 here. I would say on the average, he's averaging about 16, 17% usage rate. The minutes are there. As you can see in the last 2 games, the shots have been up. You know, he basically takes about maybe, I would say 9, maybe 10 shots a game. But as you can see here, the last 2 games, pretty much 13.5 shots. If you combine 4 or 5 out of the last 6 games, then he's averaging more like 10, 11 shots from the floor. So he's actually getting a lot more usage up front and getting a little more physical. And I think today is a game that they're going to definitely need him to do the same. He is capable of shooting up a couple of threes. He's not that good at them. He takes maybe 1 or 2 once in a while. And as you can see, the most important thing that he brings to the table is the rebounding, which they need. And, of course, he brings some defense. He got the steals here at 4 over the last 4 games, and he has had 5 blocks over the course of the last 2 games. And he's not big at, committing a lot of fouls. He's gotten 4 a few times, but never been in serious foul trouble. So Siakam is definitely someone you must consider. His home and away splits, 13 games away thus far this year. He's shooting 58% field goal percentage and 72% from the foul line, averaging 31.6 fantasy points per game, which is about 3 fantasy points better than his stat total away from Toronto. So he's actually been shooting and scoring more fantasy points on the road. So he's definitely in a very good spot. Going up against the Clippers are 29th in defending power forwards, as you can see here on the screen. And they're allowing 31.3 fantasy points per game over the course of the last 5 games. I like to judge things over the course of 5 or 6 games, sometimes even as low as 4 games. But in the last 5 games, they gave up 37 to James Johnson, 26 to Jaren Jackson, 62 to Anthony Davis, and 25 to Finney Smith over that same stretch of. So that's 4 out of the last 5 games. Those are the guys and those are the numbers that they have given up to. So I like Pascal Siakam here. And then, of course, as you can see, I definitely like Ibaka in the same matchup because, you're going to see they're going to have to go up against Marjanovic. They're going to have to go up against Harrell. You're going to, and Harris. So, again, you're going to need Ibaka. You're going to need some Siakam. Those guys are in play. I definitely put in the player pool Harrell as well as Tobias Harris. I also threw in here Josh Jackson and Mr. Rashawn Holmes, which I told you guys yesterday to watch out for Rashawn Holmes. You'll probably get some more minutes, and he had a fantastic game too, 4,500. Not a bad play. We could throw in here Minu, but I think the Minu is priced too high for me. 6,300 is a bit high for me this matchup against Houston. Houston is pretty tough, usually up front with players, with P.J. Tucker and company being a pretty good defender, even though Minu brings the same thing. He's more of a rebound specialist, defender, getting blocks and getting steals and stuff like that. He's not a big scorer. Neither is PJ. But I'm going to leave those guys out of this player pool for today. All right. So that's what we're looking at. We got Siakam in there. Then we go to center. And at center for me, man, like I said, you can't go with a Capella, Wicked Nurkic. Like I said, stack them with their teammates, either pair them up, have some correlation, have 2 or 3 of them or not, and then make sure you flip the script and utilize them in different multiple lineups if you play multiple lineups. If not, I'm not in favor of these guys today, man. Capella and Nurkic, looking at their history, Nurkic has had a little bit more better success, but these guys, they're priced a little high. Obviously, granted, Fanduel does that in these matchups, especially 3-game slates and 2-game slates. They definitely boost up the price tag on these guys. But Capella and Nurkic, I'm not willing to pay $9,000 and $9,000 respectively, both of them. You need about $45 to me value. I personally think neither one of them are going to get to $45 today. I really don't. So I am going to fade both of those guys. You guys are welcome to play those guys. I think that, you can. I'm not even going to throw them in the player pool. I think that Ayton is a better deal at 6,600. And I love Jonas Valanciunas, who am I going to speak about. Jonas Valanciunas today, especially if Marjanovic is going to be at center for the Clippers, which I would probably think they will utilize him. I don't care if this guy only plays, right now he's been playing pretty much 18 to 20 minutes on average, but he gets you 13 fantasy points. He is a 1.1 fantasy point per minute player. He can light it up and get you 1.2 fantasy, 1.3 fantasy points per minute in a short period of time. And I'm willing to take my chances at 5,300. He's coming in here with 13.7 rebounds, 1 assist, 25.5 fantasy points per game. At 5,300, you need 26, and on DK, he's 4,800 for Mr. Valanciunas. You only need 24 there, and he's averaging 25.5, pretty much 26. We come over here, and we take a look at him at the cruncher. And again, it's just, for me, it's just a matter. Last 2 out of the last 3 games, he put up 30 spots, and he did that in 18 minutes and 26 minutes. Now, give me 25, 26 minutes of Valanciunas today, and he's going to get me 35 to 40. I'll take that any day of the week on a 3-game slate. I'll be totally honest with you. His usage rate is going to be sky high in that short period of time. And look at the usage rate. 18 minutes here, 37%. He put up 38 fantasy points because he took 13 shots up close. And he takes shots from the perimeter. He hits pretty much from anywhere. And he's capable of hitting some threes. But he's more of a perimeter shooter, more post up. He is very dangerous down there. When they utilize him well in a game like this today, competitive game against the Clippers. Clippers are pretty decent team. They're gonna definitely use Marjanovic up front. I would assume so. I definitely think Valanciunas would get at least 20 to 25 minutes today. Give me 25 minutes, and this guy will put up 35 to 40 for you guys. So I like Valanciunas here, hands down. Home and away splits are not bad. 59% field goal percentage, 79% from the free throw line. He's averaging 25 fantasy points per game. That's all I ask for Valanciunas, because at 5,003, you only need 25, 26, and I'm okay with that. That'll mean value. If he could see value by getting 35 to as much as 40, which I believe he can, when we're going to be okay with Jonas Valanciunas. Now, again, I threw here in the player pool Ayton, because I think Ayton could definitely meet that value too. Marjanovic, you can't pass up Marjanovic in the same game. He's only 3,700. You only need 15, 16 minutes from him and 15, 16 fantasy points. And as you can see, he's more like 1 fantasy point per minute as well. So you can pay down and you can go up and pay for a Leonard and maybe a DeRozan or even a Harden. You can get 2 studs, maybe even 3 solid players with upside for a GPP today by using Marjanovic here. So you can go with Boban, or you can go with Jonas Valanciunas. And don't forget that you got Jake Portal here as well. Jacob Portal here at 20, at 4,200, you only need 21. So I put all those players in the player pool. Now we're going to spit it out. We're going to make 30 lineups, all right? And we're going to see what comes up, what calculates here right in front of you. And we have 30 lineups are done. We got 100% Kawhi Leonard. 93% of the lineups have DeMar DeRozan. 90% has D'Anthony Melton. 83% Pascal Siakam. 77% has Ibaka. 77% has McCollum. 53% of the lineups has Jacob Portal. Mr. Alexander, 50%. Then we got Boban Marjanovic. 47%. We got Rudy Gay, 43%. Montrezl Harrell, 33%. So that, you get the picture. And as you can see right on your screen right now, you got 6 lineups right here, folks. So you got Melton here, Mills, DeRozan, McCollum, Leonard, Gay, Harrell, Ibaka, Marjanovic. Okay. Melton, Alexander, DeRozan, McCollum, Leonard, Bridges, Siakam, Ibaka, Marjanovic. Then you got Melton, Mills, DeRozan, McCollum, Kawhi Leonard, T.J. Warren, Siakam, Ibaka, Marjanovic. Then you got Alexander, Mills, DeRozan, McCollum, Leonard, Gay, Siakam, Ibaka, Marjanovic. So a lot of Marjanovic. And if I go over here to the corner of my screen, I'm going to click on each individual position. And as you can see, point guard, 90% was Melton, 50% Alexander. So right there, it's leading me to believe that I went with Melton. I think Melton is a great play. And the optimizer here on Fantasy Cruncher has him in 90% of the 30 lineups that I elected to pull out here. And then Alexander is 50%, which I mentioned. Alexander will get a bump, as well as Beverly. And as you can see, Chris Paul is all the way in the bottom out of these guards. 13%, he's in only 4 of the lineups. So you know I'm not going to be on Chris Paul. But again, guys, you can use Chris Paul. He's in a great spot, being at home, only 8,200. You only need 41 from him. We know he's capable of getting 50 or better. It's a stab that you got to take. You know, sometimes you got to make a lineup and throw him in there and hope that he does have one of those massive games. Surprisingly here, no Damian Lillard. It's too much money, and I have Dame in the player pool. Okay, if I go back here and I show you, you see I have him checked off, and he did not come up at all in the top 4 or 5 of the point guards. A shooting guard, top guy is DeRozan, which I told you guys I like, 93%. Then we got CJ McCollum at 77%. I will have some exposure to McCollum, and I think you guys should do the same. You don't have to play DeRozan. You can come down to McCollum and save. You got Avery Bradley, and then you got Danny Green. I like Danny Green a lot more than Bradley, but Bradley will get at least 30 minutes or more today, once again, because I believe Lou will be out. Small forward, you got Leonard at 100%, which I really love Leonard. He is my favorite play of the day, so he's going to be the guy that I'm going to more than likely have as my core. My main guy, Rudy Gay, 43%. Okay, I can see that. Bridges, I like at 27%. You know, Phoenix is going to have to get some scoring from somewhere. Then you got Turner and Harkless for Portland right below that at 17 and 7% respectively. And surprisingly, T.J. Warren only 7%. So they like Bridges is projected to do better. Then we go to power forward. We got Siakam at 83% and Ibaka, the tandem there. I definitely like those two, and I like Valanciunas. So definitely the game, the way everything is calculated, seems like you should be focusing on the Toronto LA Clippers game. And I'm going to have a lot of exposure to that game, more importantly, in the after hours. I love the after hours games where there's only just 2 games. You can make a nice batch of lineups. I don't know how many lineups I'm going to do today, but I will have some exposure to it. So as you can see, Siakam and Ibaka, definitely a nice plays. Harrell as well. Then you got Mr. Holmes and you got Mr. Josh Jackson at 3% respectively each. They're only in 1 lineup out of the 30. So that's a little surprising to me. Center, the 2 top guys, Marjanovic, the optimizer here on Fantasy Cruncher has selected Portal 53% in 16 out of the 30 lineups, and Marjanovic 47% in 14 out of the 30. So they did not even go with Valanciunas, but I will have exposure to Valanciunas. I really do believe Valanciunas can get us 25 or better. So out of all the guys I mentioned to you guys that I put on my kind of my top 5 here, pretty much my center is the only one that didn't come out. So I'm going to put them here on the screen so you can see it. I told you guys DeRozan. I told you guys that I was going to be on Leonard. And I said that a nice play here would be Mr. Siakam. And at center, I'm going to go with Valanciunas. And again, I will also have some exposure to Marjanovic because you can see that the optimizer is showing that. And probably a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 lines, or maybe 1 line I'll put in there, Portal. But as you can see, this lineup right here, if you go with this as a core, you got 55, 75 left. And, of course, you got some guys that I mentioned. You got Okobo here at 41. You got Beverly at 4,200. You got Patty Mills at 3,700. You can get a value play here. You could go even with Alexander and Milton at 5,100. You could even throw in there even Mr. Van Fleet. All right. Then you go shooting guard. You got DeRozan already, so you can come down. You can try McCollum. If you don't want DeRozan, you take DeRozan out. You take McCollum. You saw the optimizer has him at a high percentage. And you could come down. I really love Danny Green here. He's only 4,500. So you see you got some low mid-tier value here at 4,500. You got Bradley's going to get massive minutes. He's only 3,900. And Troy Daniels is going to get at least 30 minutes or better as well today. He has 3,700. You also got to keep an eye on the Jamal Crawford. If he does play, then he definitely changes a little bit for Troy. But if he is out, Troy Daniels is definitely the better play there. As small forward, Kawhi Leonard. If you don't want to pay off for Kawhi Leonard, I don't know what you want to do. I think he's going to be, to me, he's going to be the chalk of the night. but I'm okay with a little bit of chalk. There's nothing wrong with that, just as long as you're different in the other areas. So you got Kawhi Leonard here. If you didn't want to pay for Kawhi Leonard, then you can consider Rudy Gay in this matchup here. I think Gay at 6,500 has a chance to get 30 or better. TJ Warren should be someone to consider here. Again, I told you about Ariza. Be on the lookout for that. Be wary. There's been talks about him being traded. You don't want to lock him in there. Any of these next couple of games, I would say he should be someone you should fade. Then you got Mikal Bridges has been pretty good as of late for Phoenix, getting massive minutes. $5,000 for him for the amount of minutes he's playing. You definitely could take a stab at him. And then you got Turner. Harkless are definitely in play. And that's pretty much it for me as far as guys that you could be looking at power forward again. You could go Aldridge if you want to, or Tavares Harris. I think Siakam, Montrezl Harrell over Harris, more so today due to the fact that Harris played 41 minutes last night and Harrell only played 23 minutes. And then, of course, he's got to deal with Siakam, Ibaka, and maybe some Valanciunas. They definitely need his, his strength down below. So I would think Harrell is going to get more than 30 minutes today. I think he is the better play. And then you have here Iminu is always a defense. 6,300 is a lot of money for Iminu, who is more of a defensive guy. He could get some blocks and steals and get the rebounds. Josh Jackson could be someone you could consider here, as well as Holmes at 4,500. Not bad at all for Holmes. And that's pretty much it there. And then at center, like I said, I think you should stick with just Ayton, Valanciunas, which I gave you guys. And then, of course, you can see Marjanovic is definitely at 3,700. More than 1 fantasy point per minute. Could probably get you 1.1 fantasy points per minute in a short period of time in a matchup there where he's going to have to deal with Valanciunas and Mr. Ibaka, as well as Mr. Siakam. You could definitely see this big man get in there and hopefully play 20 minutes or better. And then you got, Portal here as well. That's probably going to get maybe 20 minutes, maybe 15 to 20 minutes as well. At 4,200, you need 21. So that's pretty much where I'm at, man. I gave you a lot of little options, a lot of different plays. You can mix match. You could definitely keep this 5 guys here and build around them, or you can take some of these guys out and utilize some of the other possible plays. And then, of course, you have here the Fantasy Cruncher. I give you the top 6 plays right there. Matter of fact, we'll go one more screen down, and you'll have a total of 12 right there, folks. So make sure if you like any of these, you can go ahead and play them. It's entirely up to you. And that's basically it. All right, guys? So you can pause the screen here when you want, so you can look at the lineups. If you like anything here, you can go ahead and play it. And that's pretty much it, ladies and gentlemen, man. I wish you guys a lot of luck. Hey, drop a like on the video. Definitely share the videos with others in social media. Greatly appreciate it. Other than that, if you're new to the channel, it's the first time here, like I said, I will be doing this kind of format for 3 and 4 game slates only. Other than that, anything above 4 games is definitely going to be regular format. And, of course, I will not be doing videos for 1 and 2 game slates if we ever have any of those. All right? And that's basically it. Any questions, anything you want to discuss, obviously you can discuss it in the comment section down below. I'll get back to everybody as best as I can. I usually get back to everybody that definitely puts in a comment in the video description. So if you have anything there, my social media is there as well. I got to upload a couple of little winnings here and there so that people could see that on Twitter as well as on Instagram. So make sure you stay and become a follower of those two, Twitter as well as Instagram, because that's where I normally put up any of my results that I do well. I just put it up there. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. I'm not a shark, so I don't play big a lot of lineups. I don't play hundreds of dollars. I would stay in that $30, $40 range pretty much a night if I play. That'll probably be the bulk of my my lineup spending, and that's basically it. So again, but anything that I win, a $5 event, $2 event, just a 100 player or a 10 player GPP, I usually share that with you guys so you can see more or less what I've played and how well I do. So this way I'm not out here preaching this stuff and giving you guys advice and it doesn't look like I don't actually play or actually get into 300s, because I do. All right. And that's basically it, man. Subscribe down below if you haven't done so already. Drop a like, and I appreciate you guys coming by and stopping in here, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video.